Welcome back at another episode of How to Program the Wavestate. This time we are going to look at the wave sequences and how to create your own wave sequences. A wave sequence is basically one type of sound where you have several step sequences that can influence at every step the behavior of your specific sound. I'm going to show you how this works by creating a Berlin school type of bassline. We all know that we have the init performance where we have a standard crossfading between two samples. But when you want to create rhythmic wave sequences or bass sequences, for instance, then there are a few tricks you need to know. And this tutorial is going to explain specifically that by creating a specific bassline with certain notes that we want to map across the wave sequence in the pitch lane. So let's start by determining what kind of Berlin bass type of bassline we want. I'm going to use one of my bass sounds for that to see what we are going to create. No, not a funk bass. I think this is got a good sound. Good enough. Let's see what kind of bassline we want to create. When you create Berlin school type of bass lines, they're mostly not that many notes, very repeating, and they rely heavily on delays for the in-between notes. So you have to give space between the notes to make that happen. So let's create such a bassline. Let me try. Yeah, something like this. One thing that is good to know is when you create specific basslines for Berlin school, the Korg can't recognize minor or major chords, so be sure to use only notes from the sus chords or fifth or seventh notes, like this one. Those notes will always fit in a minor or a major pattern, and you make it yourself much more easier to do this. So when we know this, let's create a bassline. Yeah, we want to do something like this in a slower tempo. That's an 8-note sequence with some timing variations in it, so that's a good thing. Well, when you want to look at the wave sequence module, that's basically this section combined with the steps. You see multiple lanes, and an important thing to know is that the timing lane determines how fast each step goes. So you can set it in seconds or you can set it tempo based. Now for Berlin school we like to have it tempo based. As said earlier in the tutorials, we know that you want to set the tempo. It's blue, so hold the shift button, press the timing and the tempo button will lit up. And now you can set the tempo of each specific step. Well, we've created this bassline. So there's it's quarter notes with faster notes for 2 steps repeating. So when we know this, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it goes back. And it's a 5-note sequence for the timing lane. Well, when you start an init performance, let's go to an init performance by going all the way back to the left. Now we have the standard wave sequence everybody knows with the crossfading. So we want to change that. Now, first we are going to program the bass sound, which we are going to work with. Press the sample button and select the first step. Well, it's now the first item, and we want to use a bass sound for that. So let's go to the synth section and create one of the bass lines. I think there is an synth bass. You still hear that it's crossfading, so we don't want that. So set the loop end to the first and hold the shift button to set the end button also to the first. As you see, no page diving needed. Just learn the interface and you can do almost anything with just the knobs and buttons. Now if I play it again, you will hear it crossfading, but that's not a problem. We're going to fix that later on in the timing section. So let's change this sound to a bass line, as well as I displayed in the in an earlier subjective tutorial. So something like, well, let me say decay, add a little bit of note off release to avoid the clicking at the end, and set the filter envelope to maximum intensity to maximum so that the filter has a full effect on it. Now sculpt the sound. A little bit less. Okay. Good sound just by changing a few of the cutoff intensity and the filter envelope to create this bass sound. It has a specific Berlin type of feel to it, so good enough. You also hear that if I hold the note, it doesn't continue. That's good. We don't want the crossfading. So let's create a bass line. First of all, we want to set the crossfade to off. We don't want crossfading at all. We want to have every step at the normal level. Hold the shift button to set it in tempo mode. Dus shift timing and you set it in tempo mode. And now we can set each step to the value we want. You see that the end parameter is A2, which is default, and we can't add extra steps at the moment because we can only set 2 steps and we need more. We needed 5 steps to create that pattern, the timing pattern that we wanted. So we need 3 extra steps. You can do this by holding to go to the last page and select the action add steps to the end. We need 3 extra steps because we had 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 notes. Well, basically we have 8, but the timing was based on those 5 steps, so we add 3 steps to the end. So now it's a 5 pattern length lane. You see at the end A5, and you want to loop also to the A5. Now we have to set for the timing of each note. Now we know that it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So the first 3 are standard quarter notes. So let's do that. It's already there. It's a default quarter note for step 1, 2, 3. The 4th is a little bit faster, so set it to a faster note. And 2 of those may also make a quarter note. So basically this is a 4-step sample. So when we press a button now, you only will hear 1 bass note and not the entire 5-step, even though it does it. And now why is that? That's because the filter goes to 0 when you press a note, and what you want is that each step is that the filter envelope is triggered again. This is a very important feature, and I think not many of you will know how to do this, but we have to say to the Wavestate that for this specific envelope, and you can do this also for the amp filter and pitch envelope, for the amp envelope and the pitch envelope, that it has to retrigger at each step. Well, luckily on page 3 of the filter envelope we have a trigger source, and when we open the trigger source you see that there is a section that's called generators, And if you scroll down in the generators, you see that at each step pulse you can trigger the envelope again. Well, just memorize this. That's how it works. And if I hold the button now, you hear that the envelope trigger is at each step triggered again. So now we already created a bassline with a specific rhythmic pattern. You also see that I have set the octave to min2. I don't want that, so let's go to the sample and set the octave to lower, so that it will blend later on with the pads and other sounds that we are going to use. So you see the octave button of the sample step, set it to -2. So now this specific sample is played too low. Well, we've programmed 2 lanes now. We've used one sample because we didn't need any more samples. If you used more samples, we could also for each step go through each sample, but we'll do that in a later tutorial when we create for instance a pad sound wave sequence. For now we are going to focus on the bass line. So we have the timing right because we've determined what we want to play. That was what we wanted to play, so the timing is there. You hear the rhythm that we wanted to use, but you don't hear the pitch now. And we are going to create that in the pitch lane, so that we are going to say each step it has to play that specific note. Okay, so you see we have the init pitch lane and it is 2 length, and we need a 10 note pitch lane corresponding with the timing lane, which is a multiple of 5, because we have created a bassline in our mind like this, that it goes down. You hear that you pressed 10 notes, so we need a 10 note pitch lane. So we are doing this the same way again. Press shift page plus 2 times, go to add steps to the end. We need 8 more steps on the basic 2. And now when we go to the pitch lane we have 10 steps. So press the pitch lane, you will see end start A1 and A2, and we also set the loop to the end. So if you press the pitch button and you do this, you will see that it runs according to the timing lane through the pitch pattern. So we've created this bassline. So let's create that. That's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 note and a 12 note. So 1, 7, 12 for the first 3. Well, the 1 is the 0, the second one is the +7, the third one is the +12. So now it will play 1, 2, 3. It has to be 12, of course. The fourth is this note, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 4 is +5. Number 5 is this note, so +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then it starts over again with the 0, 1, again the +7, that note, and again the 8, the 12th note. The 9 is now this time the G note, which is the 7th note. And the last step is the F note, which is the 5th, based on the C. So that's okay. If you want a different timing, for instance a little bit slower, just can do it like this, and now the whole sequences. Which is better for this style, because you can add those delayed notes in between them. Let's do that. Press the delay button, and because it's a tempo synced button, go to the stereo cross delay and select one of the presets, for instance an 118 dot for the in-between notes. Or if you want to have more body in the sound, press the LPF. Which is, well, a little bit better. In this case I will use the HPF filter. You can also modify the parameters in between by holding the shift button. You have the edit 2 and edit 3 if you want a longer feedback. Let me hold the note. You will hear that it goes longer, but for now that's not needed. You can select the timbre filter of the filter. You hear that the high pass filter will kick in now. Okay, so now we have that specific bassline created in one of the wave sequences. A good time to save again, as stated earlier. Save a lot, because when you make a mistake you can't undo it. So between every major step, save. As I said before, I like to use the my initials with an exclamation mark between them, so that I know that it's still an in progress sound. You can always remove move it later when you are finished with the sound. So Berlin, for instance. Remove the buttons and add the exclamation mark for me. You cannot override. No, of course not. We use the init performance. An init performance is a factory performance, so we need to create a new one. Hold shift and press right and save as a new. So now whenever we do something that is completely wrong, for instance pressing the wrong element, now it's gone, we can always return to it by going, let's go to the QR. Berlin, and then it. So I see that this tutorial takes way too long already. So that's how you create Berlin school type of bass sounds. The most important parts were the timing, the sample you selected, in this case one sample, the pitch space, and another important thing was the filter settings. And then on the last page there's a trigger source, and you have to set it in the generator section to step pulse. So that's basically all there is to it to create all your own bass lines. Well, that's basically it. Let's continue with the next tutorial where we are going to create a waves a pad sound with cross-faded samples to get more insight in how the sequencing module works.